Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.
I mean, sure, yeah, these things aren't the most sentient, but even they must be able to muster up enough animal instinct to realize that death awaits them down this corridor. I hear large concussive noises. Stay away. But none of them seem to come to this conclusion. No retreat, no surrender, not even for the hatchlings. Let's get 'em no matter what. You bless the classically actiony, testosterone-y named Gunor something or other. His jaw is suitably square, with at times quite perfectly shaped head. He has a military buzz cut, and a doom-like representation of health, and you blast the last surviving member from a mission to hinder their infestation on the ship. So you're gonna use your MG to shoot your way from area to area to try and solve the situation, dragging your tripod-mounted lifeline along a space odyssey-like glowing light show of a hallway. Except here, the only improvement in human wisdom and understanding is how effectively you shoot and use skills to kill these aliens en masse. Human ingenuity in its stride. First off, visually, I believe it looks great. It doesn't look like pixel art, it's more like it pays homage to transition graphics. In this case, seemingly the sprites that were used just as 3D was being implemented on the Sega Genesis. So perhaps we can think of our hero as a much darker version of Echo the Dolphin, with delightful blood spatter. Oh, aliens with red blood. That's odd. But at least they give us nice, very imposing pops of green and purple goo, because generally this game is rather drained. The aliens themselves are quite brown, but it works for me. I didn't get bogged down in their technically generic design. Head crabs, centipedes, and these things that remind me of something, I just can't remember what. And for some reason, these tentacles have kind of a stop-motion quality. There are a few different areas, but you only see their hallways really. Those can add color, but nothing more than a silvery blue light show or the pale red of a console. Space age tech, yet still you use a boombox. As well as cassettes, we have intergalactic flight, yet fortunately still have the pencils to wind them up, grenades that produce a localized black hole. But still, 80s fetishism. The music is good too, as you would expect from a game character that prizes their equipment as much. The kind of bobbing rhythm where it becomes part of the action. It transitions from a sinister intro usually into some clubby electro, sometimes with the mentioned 80s theming. And on occasion, it will make a bit more of a departure. And you can pick and choose which tracks to include in the playlist, if you've progressed far enough to unlock them. Alright, these cassettes have some new tricks after all. Gameplay-wise, it's surprisingly fun. I mean, I was a tad skeptical. Your main controls involving aiming in a forward arc, purely on the Y-axis, using a different button to fire your alternate ammo and or firing mode, a button for throwables like grenades and molotovs, and lastly a button to use your melee weapon or bladed throwing implement, or those moments where your gun overheats, or you need to bash, slash and thrash. A couple will get through, or you're desperate and have to go full on knife in your teeth, or you know, just wildly swing a kitchen knife until it connects. Aim can be slightly less important than you think it is, since at times your bullets can be quite forgiving. Sometimes they just find a way to the alien meat even though they shouldn't be able to. But the difficulty doesn't lie in connecting with the generous hitbox. It's in identifying who to kill first, and with what, when to splurge on a grenade, when to fire your special ammo. It's essentially about crowd control. Attacking specific unit types, like the shielders, dispatching them quickly so that they literally aren't in the way anymore. Other than that unit prioritization, the strategy shifts over to picking power-ups when your combo meter fills up, such as double damage, the rather pleasing double barrel, or double score. But usually I would just choose to resupply, so I would get free stuff and save up the score slash currency to buy more permanent upgrades that you can equip that, for instance, increase fire rate, provide better cooling, alternate firing mode, etc. And each wave gives a checkpoint, so you can change your loadout when you get blown up or torn to pieces. Last long, get points, die, spend points. Kill some more. It's very speedy and light, tight, roguelike elements where you don't have to think much. Continue on this course until you beat the area boss, and drag that gun and boombox to the next one. But don't worry though, as simple as this sounds, almost like a score chase, it does not outstay its welcome. It only took me 3 hours to complete the game, attempt a high score, run, and complete like half of New Game Plus, where things are harder but you retain your upgrades. And annoyingly, the area restrictions on purchasing the higher level upgrades that you haven't got yet. I'll get to spend you soon. It's a surprisingly fun arcadey score chaser with roguelike elements. Plus it has a little bit of story. Pretty much what you'd expect and not much, but it's there. Logs of the dead. Wow, what's that? They're coming. This is my last will and testament. That sort of thing. The game is cheap on Steam. 88 Rand full price, 22 Rand on sale. I'm gonna use my full 3 hours here. I didn't want to be too harsh to it. And you may be able to squeeze more hours out of it with high score runs, but honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I was spent when I stopped. That means we're working with 7 Rand 34 cents per hour of gameplay, which is not great. It's almost bad, but at least it's small in download, as it only takes up 306.9 megabytes on the hard drive. And the game does work on the Warhorse. In some ways you can say without incident, but during another short test, I did see that it did average between 29 and 31 frames per second. On occasion I did see the odd jolt to 27 frames per second, but I'd argue it's playable in this state. You don't exactly move around much. It's actually close to my gaming PC's FPS, and it's close to the FPS I get on my gaming PC. Apparently this game wasn't really designed to go much above 30, it seems. And stereotypically it's kind of kid-friendly, if it is a bit bloody, but they're insectoid-like aliens. Well, how that brain splits is quite violent. And other than that, I can't remember anything objectionable, other than maybe some eye itch at the start while my eyes were getting used to the situation. Visually, I thought the game was very good. Sometimes I do like the transition graphics, edgy sprites and the like, if you like that era. They really embrace the drained color palette, the aliens are quite brown, and most of the environment isn't really trying to stand out either, apart from those glowing hallways and maybe some lighting elements. Glowy green explosions in the dark, splashes of color. Really stands out. The aliens perhaps are a bit familiar or even generic in terms of design though, but there are a lot of them on screen. Gunor's a bit generic too, arguably, except maybe for a nicety that we'll get into in the final gag. It has good music that melds with the Xeno's target practice well, usually starts with a sort of horror intro, and then moves into some electronic music, rhythmic, maybe even clubby, sometimes also goes real 80s and synthy, and makes a genre departure on occasion. That intro makes you think it's one thing, just gonna be some ambient stuff, and then you start bobbing to it, but it did meld enough that I really had to go and listen again to the music and make sure. It is great simple gameplay. The roguelike loop is satisfying. You need to focus but not really think. Power-ups are rewarding. It's short enough that the simplicity doesn't drag. It's a lovely score chaser about an exterminator essentially. Plus it's kind of unique just how surprisingly fun this game is, with such a small range of movement. It's really fun to kill these aliens en masse. You need to learn to prioritize enemies, etc. On the maybe side, there's not much story, and what story it does have is arguably functional. And on the con side, while the game generally doesn't outstay its welcome, New Game Plus is too hard for too little reward. You've already played through it, now everything's harder, you can't buy higher level upgrades until you reach that point in the game again, and I doubt that would help, because by the end of the standard game, I would be surprised if you had a fairly high level loadout already, and that whatever else you could buy is maybe more different than overtly better. And the mixtape system may have an issue that may mean you don't hear all the tracks. When I originally played, all I did was add all the songs on the different cassettes as I unlocked them. But as I went through the songs individually for the review, there were some real unfamiliar pieces of music. I don't know whether I exited way before I reached the later tracks and it restarts each time, but as I showed you just now, it may have some other issue at play here. Come on, play it. This arcadey treat about a person with very unhealthy habits. He smokes, barely moves, maybe bursts his eardrums via music and ordnance, never eats, gets splattered with alien goo, and probably will throw their back out eventually.
Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.